There is breaking news today. I'm sure you probably heard most of it by now, but there was a major attack at a hospital in the Gaza Strip that has killed some unknown number of people, but quite a few have been killed in this. And as we look at some of the results of this bombing, we've seen that the parking lot actually of the hospital is what was struck, not the building itself. And there were many people that were crowded around the hospital because there's simply no room for them anywhere else. They've been kicked out of the northern part of Gaza and forced to go into other areas, and many of them were literally just camped outside in the middle of the street, and they were casualties of this. Now, there's a lot of disputing information running around on both sides. Some of the Israeli government is saying that this was definitely a Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket that misfired. And they have provided some video evidence, which they say shows some of the rockets going up and one of them falling on the hospital. Then on the other side, you have other sources from Palestinian sources that are claiming, no, to the contrary, these are rockets that the Palestinians don't even have. They don't make that sound. They don't have that big of a payload. They said if you had have seen this kind of an explosion, if the Palestinian rockets could do this, and you would have seen those kind of explosions on Israeli targets, which you haven't because they're not strong enough. I don't know. I'll just tell you right now, without in deep dive here, we always want to give you the true information. And right now, no one knows. There's too many competing information out there, and it's too easy to make videos look and say what you want to do. That's not really the crucial thing here. What is very much important, though, is that many Palestinians were killed, and the hospital has been damaged, even from the outside, from the blast that went off. And the issue with this is that you need to understand is that this has the potential to be a real flashpoint in this war that could make things even more difficult for Israel and the United States. Now, the first casualty, even before President Biden landed, was that there was immediate fallout from the Arab regimes that he was specifically going over there to see. This morning, he was supposed to have met in Jordan with King Abdullah, with Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the Palestinian Authority, and some representatives also of Egypt were supposed to be there. It was supposed to be a really important thing where President Biden was going to try and basically correct some of the deficiencies that Secretary of State Blinken had failed to do, where he didn't get any of the parties to do any of the things that we wanted to. But the idea was that if Biden goes there himself, then these things would be broken loose. And as we talked about on a deep dive just yesterday, that this trip for Biden had high risk, but it had almost no upside. The idea was that the minimum was supposed to be that these Arab leaders would at least do something, let in some more humanitarian aid, open up some corridors, something like that, basically a strong arm of the president's presence would do that. Well, now then, they're not even meeting with him. And so far, the fallout continues to get worse because throughout the entire Middle East, I'll just tell you, nobody there believes that this was not an Israeli bomb. No one. And on the Israel side, no one believes that this was an Israeli bomb. So whatever view you had going in, it's now been strengthened. And so what actually happened probably won't be known until the war is over for sure. But right now it almost doesn't even matter. It only matters what people think and what they're feeling with their emotions. And this is driving the sides even further apart. It's making the Arab people even matter. And that's both at the government level and at the people level. There are protests throughout the Middle East, even in some of our allied nations like Turkey. They are also protesting against this. But those Arab regimes depend a great deal on the support of their people. So if their people are, rioting over this stuff, they're not going to take the American side or the Israeli side over the Arab side. And we're seeing that. So Egypt has denied in the strongest terms that they're going to do anything. They're not going to let any of the Palestinians in because they said, basically, you're just asking us to take Israel's problem to make it easier for Israel to launch its incursion into the Gaza Strip. We're not going to do that. Saudi Arabia has come out in the strongest terms and condemned what happened and completely blames Israel. They're not even being equivocal. They're saying, yes, it was Israel, and they're condemning them for it. Jordan is saying the same thing. All of these regimes are saying that it was Israel's fault and that they're not willing to do anything to help. So Biden's not even meeting with anyone. And that's a real problem for us. Just, I think it was less than an hour before we started making this broadcast here, President Biden went in and made another public statement in Israel in which he lays out what the United States is going to do for Israel, how we're going to support them, and a lot of empathy for the Israeli side. Now, let me just say on the surface of it, much of those comments were completely warranted because Hamas terrorists did break into Israel and slaughter innocent people in the most barbaric and brutal way. There is no justification for it at all, period. There's just not. And so those people deserve justice. And the Israeli people, understandably, are driven to desire to see a military, punishment on those people who did that. And that part is legitimate. But Biden made a huge mistake in that throughout this 16-minute broadcast that he made, there was no empathy at all for the Palestinian people, just a little bit. There was no overt mention of the hospital bombing. Again, it doesn't matter who actually did it. You can have the same empathy that you had for the Israeli citizens that were murdered as you can for the Palestinian innocent people who were in a hospital desperately trying to get away from war and were blown up. Even if it was the Palestinian military or Islamic Jihad that did it, say that. You can even say evidence shows that it was an errant rocket on their side. Fine, that's fine. But show some empathy for the Palestinian people. And that's more than just normal human compassion. There's also a diplomatic component to it. If you actually want to get the support of these Arab regimes that he went over there to talk to, ignoring the Palestinian deaths is not a way to get it. I mean, because they're going to want to see some contrition also and some empathy. Because here, look, we have some footage here we're going to show that one of the reasons why nobody in the Arab world believes that Israel didn't launch this bomb is because the bombs Israel has launched have been causing death and destruction all over the Gaza Strip. I mean, they have leveled entire neighborhoods and buildings complete. There was, in fact, let me see if we have it. We have this one clip we'll show in just a second to where you see literally an entire apartment complex just razed to the ground. Watch this right here. Okay, Gary, do we have the one where that was I believe the CBS report?
Israeli artillery and airstrikes have pounded Gaza in one of the most intense sustained bombardments the narrow strip of land has ever seen. Authorities in Gaza say more than 2,300 people have been.
You see, this is what things look like from the Arab position and from the Palestinian point of view. Now they're saying, okay, if you want to go after Hamas, the terrorists who physically did all the murders, that's fair. But this is entire apartment complexes leveled to the ground, and of course, who knows if people didn't get out of there before. And we know for sure that there has been, even according to independent assessments, over 2,800 Palestinians killed and over 10,000 wounded. And again, these are the civil population that has been, under these horrific conditions before. And now then a million of them have been shoved into half of the country, which still continues to get periodic bombings from the Israeli side already. Still, even today, they're continuing some of their attacks into what Israel says are places where Hamas is having command centers or preparing operations. And they're running out of water. They're running out of food. For the hospitals, they've already ceased operations because they don't have enough fuel to keep their generators going. So there is a humanitarian catastrophe that's on the brink of happening. So President Biden, at the very least that he should be doing, is putting immediate pressure on both Egypt and Israel to say, get that Rafah gate open and get those supplies in there. And look, Israel has been reluctant to do it because they say, yeah, but some of those trucks could have ammunition or some of this aid could actually get to Hamas. That's going to happen. There's no question about it. That's a true statement. But you can't say we're going to deny possible food and water to our military opponents at the expense of seeing large numbers of civilian people being starved to death or dying of thirst. And that's going to start happening. And if Israel thinks it's got a problem with public sentiment right now, that will completely erode and possibly escape if all of a sudden all of these large numbers of Palestinian people start starving to death. And look, this is a big issue. Even if Americans are, completely behind the Israeli government and completely sympathetic to the loss that the Israeli people suffered and their version of 9/11, and they are, again, I'm unequivocal. The loss that they have suffered is horrific and indefensible. But so is the loss to the Palestinian people who had nothing to do with it. These people that you just saw on the screen there, they're innocent people who just want to live. And if you want to go after Hamas, then that's one thing. And we'll talk about this in a subsequent deep dive. The military aspects of this are going to be extraordinarily difficult. But if Israel allows Palestinian people to starve to death and to die of thirst, and then they launch an incursion into the northern part of the Gaza Strip that, again, almost all it can do is just obliterate the whole the city infrastructure, then they're going to lose public support, maybe even in the United States, because people are already starting to say, hey, this seems a little too much. There's this almost reflexive love for Israel in the United States, and that's understandable. But we can't afford, Israel can't afford, the President Biden can't afford to let that support erode. And that means that they're going to have more empathy for the Palestinian people, and they're going to have to do something to support that. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how much money or ammunition or weapons President Biden wants to give Israel. If they lose the support of the international community, and especially if the Arab regimes get even more turned off and potentially like Hamas, Hezbollah in Lebanon, or any of these other Islamic groups start attacking and adding to Israel's woes, it'll only get worse. So for Israel's sake, for Israel's security, President Biden needs to press hard for humanitarian assistance to get in to help the people of the Palestinian people in Gaza. That's all we have for you today. We'll cut some more. Be sure and like this and subscribe, and please share this with your friends, because you're getting information here you're just not going to get anywhere else. There's unfortunately too many in the West that are afraid to say anything besides full-throated and complete support to Israel. And as I'm pointing out here, that doesn't help Israel. We need to be honest and tell the truth about it. And if you want, anybody wants to know what the truth is and how to actually help Israel, please pass this along. In the meantime, we'll see you on the next episode. Deep Dive.